You have a big idea that you want to present. It may be a conclusion, a recommendation, or a status report. Maybe it's an insight that you want to share or a decision that you want to get. How can you craft a compelling presentation that will keep your audience listening? Too often, people just dive into the details. Or maybe they tell their whole story. Maybe their audience will just check out before you get to the good stuff. Professional presentation is not an art form, it's a craft. And the difference between an art form and a craft is that an art form is there solely for its beauty. Craft is beautiful, but it also serves a purpose. It's useful. Utility combined with elegance. That's the goal of your presentation. Presentations have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I'm going to divide my discussion of how to craft a compelling presentation into those three components. First, starting your presentation. Your audience doesn't have time for a full description of everything you've done, and they might not have the patience to wait very long either. They want the good stuff, and they want it now. So BLUF. Bottom line up front. Give them your central idea early. Of course, you might want a simple introduction to lead up to your central idea, but keep it short and simple. Something that will allow people to settle into your presentation, but not so long that they'll start to get bored. An effective structure for your introduction is to start with a simple statement of the context or the background, no more than a sentence or two, that puts people at ease, knowing they understand where this presentation is rooted. Then, before they start to get bored, give them some new information, some findings, some complication, some peril that their organisation might be in. And from that, you can provide the setup for your central idea. And often the best way to do that is to either ask a question or to pose a question that you are then going to answer. And the answer to that question is your central idea. That way, in no more than a few sentences, you have gone straight to the good stuff. Now your audience knows why they need to listen and what they're going to hear about. Of course, the biggest part of your presentation is the middle, the body of your presentation, where you put across your key messages. Once you've stated your central idea, you will build upon it by answering the core question that your audience will have in mind, or the core question that you want them to have answered. Of all the possible questions you could tackle, 2 are going to account for the vast majority of the presentations you will give in a business environment. Firstly, it's the question why, the justification for your central idea. The second is how you will make your central idea work. We answer the why question with reasons, and we answer the how question with a process, a series of steps. When you've posed the core question that's going to lead you to your key points, spell out your agenda for your audience so they know what they're going to hear and they can put all the things you say into context. Now you are properly into the body of your presentation, where you give your key points. So let's start with how you answer the why question. And of course, this is about giving reasons in a clear and succinct way. For maximum impact, keep the number of reasons to an upper limit of 3. If you try to give more than 3 reasons, by the time you get to reason number 6 or reason number 7, now we are into the weeds. These reasons are not very compelling. But because we've now sat through 5, 6, 7, 8 other reasons, we've forgotten the first and most important ones. And because the reason you're telling me now isn't very compelling, it feels like there is no compelling reason. If, on the other hand, you give me 1 or 2 or at most 3 big compelling reasons, then I can remember them. There may be other reasons to justify your central idea, but let smaller-minded people put those reasons after you have finished presenting. So tell your audience that there are going to be 3 reasons, describe the first one, and then the second, and then the third, and then recap what those 3 reasons were. If you are answering the how question, then once again, 3 steps is ideal, but the reality is that few processes are that simple and you may need to go to more steps. This matters less. However, if you want people to remember your process, you still have to limit the number of steps. And whilst the practical limit is probably around 7, I would argue that a 5-step process is the most you want. That said, what if you have 10, 12, 15, 20 steps? The answer is to group the steps. Maybe steps 1, 2, and 3 can be part of a larger whole. That way, you might have a 5-step process, but step 1 might have 3 components. By chunking your steps into a smaller number, you make them easier to understand, you make the presentation easier to follow, and you make them core messages easier for your audience to remember. What if you need to address both the question why and question how? Now, there are some purists who would say that a good presentation only seeks to answer one of those, but I'm not a purist in anything. I recognise that the pragmatics of real-world business presentations is that sometimes we need to do more than one thing in our presentation. But there is one essential point here. If you do need to answer the questions why and how, always answer the question why first. If people do not have a good, juicy reason why your central idea is right, then they're not going to be motivated to listen as you explain how to implement it. Why first, and then how. Indeed, sometimes at the end of your how question, you will also want to address one more question. What if? The what if question is the way that you head off objections. Objections either to the reasons you've given in the why question or the process that you've given in answering the how question. If you can identify likely objections that your audience is going to come up with, you can highlight those potential questions as genuine concerns or risks that you need to address and then address them in your presentation, then you undermine the opposition or the resistance to your ideas. Finally, you need to end your presentation, and an effective ending has 2 parts. The first part is to summarize your central idea and the key messages that you most want your audience to remember. And the second part is your call to action, a statement or an injunction or a piece of advocacy that calls on your audience to do what it is that you want them to do next. Keep your call to action simple and make sure that in your key messages during the body of your presentation, you've justified why it's the right thing to do and the benefits your audience will get from doing it. Please do like this video if you've learned from it or enjoyed it. I'll be creating loads more great management courses content for you, so please do subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any of that content. I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and in the meantime, keep learning.